You know, most people spend their whole lives paying into a system they barely understand. And then, right when it matters most, they get blindsided by the very changes that were supposed to help them. I've watched this happen decade after decade. People sit across the kitchen table, open their bank statement, and genuinely don't know whether what landed in their account is right or wrong. That's not their fault. The system is designed to be confusing. But here's what I know to be true right now. In 2025, Social Security just went through one of the most significant adjustments in recent memory. We're talking about a COLA increase that's putting real additional dollars into the pockets of retired Americans every single month. Not promises, not projections, actual money. The question isn't whether you're getting more, you likely are. The real question, the one nobody seems to be answering clearly, is how much more are you specifically entitled to, and are you actually receiving every dollar you've earned? Because in my experience, the gap between what people receive and what they're rightfully owed is far more common than Washington would ever care to admit. Stay with me. We're going to break this down completely. No jargon, no political spin, just the numbers and the truth. Now let me start with something that most financial commentators won't tell you, because frankly, they're either too busy oversimplifying or too afraid of boring their audience with the truth. But I've never believed in talking down to people. You've worked too long and too hard to be handed a watered-down version of reality. The Social Security Cost of Living Adjustment, what they call the COLA, isn't just a routine government tweak. It's a mechanism that was built into the system back in 1975, and it was built specifically because Congress recognized something important. Inflation is invisible theft. Every year that your fixed income stays the same while prices go up, you are effectively getting poorer without anyone taking a single dollar directly from your wallet. The COLA was designed to fight that, and this year, it's fighting harder than it has in years. For 2025, Social Security recipients are seeing a 2.5% cost of living adjustment applied to their monthly benefits. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. 2.5% doesn't sound like much. But let me show you how that actually plays out in real dollars, because perception and reality are two very different animals, and most people never stop to do the actual arithmetic. If you were receiving the average Social Security retirement benefit, which heading into 2025 sat at approximately $1,227 per month, a 2.5% increase puts an additional $48 in your pocket every single month. That's $576 over the course of a full year. Now, is that going to make you wealthy? No. But is it real money that you are legally entitled to receive and that you should make absolutely certain you are getting in full? Absolutely. Because here's what I've learned over a lifetime of studying systems and human behavior. People leave money on the table not because they're unintelligent, but because they assume someone else is watching out for them. Nobody is watching out for you the way you can watch out for yourself. And if your benefit is higher than average, which applies to millions of Americans who worked longer careers or in higher-paying fields, your increase is proportionally larger. Someone collecting $2,500 a month is looking at an extra $62.50 per month, or $750 annually. Someone collecting $3,000 a month is gaining $75 per month, $900 a year. These numbers add up. Over 5 years, that's several thousands of dollars, and all of it, every single cent, is money you earned through decades of payroll contributions. This isn't charity. This isn't a government handout. This is a contractual obligation that the United States government owes you. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention, and that's the question of whether your benefit was calculated correctly in the first place. Because if there's an error in your base benefit, then every COLA increase you've ever received has been slightly wrong too, and those errors compound over time. The Social Security Administration processes millions of records. They are not infallible. Mistakes happen, earnings records get misreported, employers make errors on W-2 forms, data entry mistakes occur, and the burden of catching those mistakes falls almost entirely on you. This is why I've always believed that one of the smartest things any American approaching retirement, or already in retirement, can do is create a My Social Security account at ssa.gov and review your earnings history line by line, year by year. Look at every year you worked. Make sure the income reported matches what you actually earned. If there are discrepancies, they can be corrected, but you have to catch them. And catching them after the fact, especially years into retirement, becomes significantly harder. The records you need may be harder to locate. Your former employers may no longer exist. Time is genuinely your enemy on this particular issue. Let me shift now to something that affects a significant portion of retirees, and that's the relationship between Social Security and Medicare, specifically Medicare Part B premiums. Because what the government gives with one hand through the COLA increase, it has a history of quietly taking back with the other through rising Medicare premiums. For 2025, the standard Medicare Part B premium increased to $185 per month, up from $174.70 in 2024. That's an increase of roughly $10.30 per month. So if you're having your Medicare premium deducted directly from your Social Security benefit, which is how most recipients handle it, your net increase is somewhat smaller than the headline number suggests. Instead of seeing the full 2.5% COLA reflected in your deposit, you're seeing that gain partially offset by the Medicare premium increase. This is not a conspiracy. It's not anyone being deliberately deceptive. It's simply how the system works. But understanding it is the difference between feeling blindsided when your check doesn't seem quite as large as you expected and knowing exactly why the numbers are what they are. Knowledge is the only real protection against confusion, and confusion is expensive. Now I want to address something that a lot of people in their 60s and 70s are grappling with, and that's the question of whether they claim Social Security at the right time. Because the age at which you claim your benefit has an enormous permanent effect on how much you receive every month for the rest of your life. If you claimed at 62, the earliest possible age, your benefit was permanently reduced. Depending on your full retirement age, that reduction could be as much as 30%. That reduction never goes away. Every COLA increase you receive is calculated on top of a base that was already reduced. On the other hand, for every year you delayed claiming beyond your full retirement age, up to age 70, your benefit grew by 8%. 8% per year, guaranteed, with no market risk. I want you to think about that for a moment. In a world where people chase risky investments hoping for returns like that, the federal government was offering it quietly, with no downside, and most people either didn't know or didn't believe it. The ones who waited and who are now 70 or older are collecting substantially larger checks, and their COLA increases are calculated on a much larger base. The compounding effect is significant. If you haven't claimed yet and you're in your mid to late 60s, this is still a decision worth examining carefully with a financial advisor who genuinely understands Social Security. Not just a general investment advisor, but someone who has studied the claiming strategies in depth. The difference between a suboptimal and an optimal claiming decision can easily exceed $100,000 over a lifetime. That is not a trivial number. Let's also talk about spousal and survivor benefits, because these are among the most misunderstood and most underutilized components of the entire Social Security system. If you are married, divorced after at least 10 years of marriage, or widowed, you may be eligible for benefits based on your spouse's or former spouse's earnings record, potentially receiving up to 50% of their benefit if they're living, or up to 100% if you're a survivor. And here's the part that surprises people. You can be eligible for these benefits even if you've never personally paid into Social Security, or if your own benefit would be lower than what you'd receive based on your spouse's record. The system automatically gives you the higher of the two amounts. But you have to know to ask. You have to claim it. And far too many people, particularly women who spent years out of the workforce raising families, are leaving substantial monthly income unclaimed simply because nobody ever explained this to them clearly. I've spent a great deal of time thinking about why these gaps in understanding persist, and the answer isn't a flattering one for our society. We spend enormous resources teaching people how to enter the workforce. We teach very little about how to navigate the financial landscape at the end of a career. And so, millions of Americans arrive at retirement having done everything right, worked hard, raised families, paid their taxes, and then find themselves confused, underprepared, and sometimes shortchanged by a system they supported for 40 years. The solution isn't to be angry about that. Anger doesn't put money in your account. The solution is to get informed and to get specific. Call the Social Security Administration directly. Schedule an appointment at your local SSA office if that's more comfortable. Ask them to walk you through your benefit statement. Ask about spousal options. Ask whether your Medicare premium is being handled correctly. Ask whether your earnings record looks accurate. Ask about the windfall elimination provision if you also receive a pension from a job that didn't withhold Social Security taxes, because that provision can reduce your benefit and you deserve to understand it fully. The raises that have come through this year are real. The money is there. But the system has enough complexity built into it that the difference between someone who understands it and someone who doesn't can be hundreds of dollars a month. Over a retirement that lasts 20 or 25 years, that gap becomes staggering. I've always believed that the greatest financial mistake people make isn't a bad investment or a wrong decision. It's passivity. It's the assumption that someone else has already optimized things on your behalf. In my experience, that assumption is almost always wrong. The people who end up financially secure in their later years are the ones who stayed curious, asked questions, and never stopped paying attention to the details that matter. This is your money. You earned it over a lifetime. Every single dollar of it represents hours that you worked, sacrifices that you made, and contributions that you faithfully handed over to a system built on a promise. Make sure you're collecting everything that promise owes you, because in 2025, that promise just got a little more valuable, and you deserve to feel every dollar of it.